Argentina elects right-wing populist anarcho-capitalist as president.
The explosion is coming, they sang in triumph. And here it is. Javier Milei.
Are they playing ska? Is this the song that the guy was saying in the chat? Dude, there are so many fucking memes, okay? There are so many memes already. This guy is crazy.
Libertarian, iconoclast, Trump wannabe, president-elect of Argentina, voted in by a landslide.
Yeah, the people who view Milei as some outside crazy force and not just a continuation of neoliberal austerity capitalism has no political analytical skills. Yeah, it's kind of odd because, like, he obviously has, like, ridiculous things that he says that no one will allow him to do because, like, you still need stability, right? It's the Trump equation. Like, Donald Trump comes in and he's this force, right? He's this like unshakable force, and people go, oh my God, this spells trouble for America. And it's like, what does he do? What are his most effective policy measures? One, he's just simply a continuation of the Republican Party. Okay. That's all it is. And maybe he doesn't have the same level of like restriction or restraint that like a regular institutional Republican would have, which does genuinely have harmful effects on the ground, right? For people's lives and shit. But ultimately, he's crazy right wing on immigration. Donald Trump was, right? And he did like baby separation, which went a little too far so that like America had to triangulate. But beyond that, like Abraham Accords, Israel, Palestine, fucking out of control, nutty. Rips up the fucking Iran denuclearization agreement, out of control, nutty. Meanwhile, you know, what has the Biden administration done? Hasn't fixed any of that shit. Literally has continued along in that same trajectory, right? My point is, ultimately, Donald Trump was most successful when it came down to cutting taxes for the wealthy and gutting federal agencies, right? And that is all stuff that you would see under any effective Republican leadership, and maybe even some Democratic leaderships as well. Not to the same degree, of course. Federal agencies especially, Brandon has been very strong on. So this is, in a way, very similar to that. As far as Milei goes, he is very similar to Bolsonaro, where he is... Address the allegation. Feels weird, man. What is the allegation this time? Dollarizing the economy to fight inflation is batshit crazy. Just like fucking cutting taxes to combat inflation is insane. Oh, he said I'm trolling.
La situación de Argentina es crítica. Los cambios que nuestro país necesita son drásticos. No hay lugar para gradualismo, no hay lugar para la tibieza, no hay lugar para medias tintas.
With inflation at 140%, growing poverty, and the left-wing Peronists in power for 16 of the last 20 years, people voted for one thing, un cambio, a change.
Creo que esta vez la Argentina necesitaba un cambio.
Javier Milei porque realmente.
I like that you ask these motherfuckers, like, what do you think about the IMF? They will all say, fuck the IMF, horrible institution. It should be blown up, okay? But then they go and they fucking vote over and over again for motherfuckers that have to, either by force or ideologically aligned, because they're ideologically aligned, with dudes who are going to follow the austerity measures and implement them. And this time they just directly voted for basically the greatest IMF leader that you could have put forward.
Realmente necesito un cambio, quiero un cambio para mi país.
The losing candidate, the current finance minister Sergio Massa, conceded and wished Milei luck. He'll need it.
Why can't we get a Milei but socialist? God, I'd love for the president of the left to say, hey, no half measures, let's do this shit. I mean, when that happens in Latin America, they get executed. So, what do you mean? When you have a no half measures guy, they either get killed or they're completely blocked off from trade for the rest of the world. Or if you have a yes half measures, let's do social democracy, please guy, Lula, he literally gets prosecuted falsely in one of the most corrupt countries. And like he gets thrown in prison for not being for being like 3% corrupt, okay, in comparison to the 75% corruption that's happening. So there's no circumstance in which like someone can go, yeah, I'm going to legitimately save the country and implement nationalization and do good things for my people. It's pretty funny because, like, I mean, Argentina is not like this, but I saw a tweet. I remember it's like every Latin American election is like the coalition of socialist, indigenous, workers' parties, peoples, 51% of the vote, or 50.9% of the vote, and then the other is like. The other is like anti-Semitic Nazis for tort reform, and then that gets like 49.9% of the vote. This guy, on the other hand, is, I mean, Argentina is a little bit different than that, but, you know, this guy is awesome. He's a fucking huge meme, and he is dog shit, and I don't really know what can happen to Argentina in general.
Milei brandished a chainsaw while campaigning to show how he plans to slash government spending and the state itself. One of his supporters even dressed as a chainsaw to reinforce the point.
A lot of people are covering this without realizing this is Chainsaw Man. Like, they don't know. They don't have enough anime knowledge.
He plans to abandon the peso for the dollar, but the central bank has no dollars and the country is deeply in debt. 4 years ago, before entering politics, he styled himself General ANCAP, General Anarcho-Capitalist.
I think this is an embarrassment. I think you should shutter the doors and close it off. If you voted for a guy that did that, it's over. You're not a serious country. You can't ever be considered a serious country. It's like, we voted for Trump, and that was really embarrassing, right? Like, that was really, really embarrassing. But at least Trump didn't do motherfucking this, dude. It's ridiculous. If you say shit like, we had no other choice, you're a deeply unserious person with zero analytical skills. I mean, dude, you could have literally voted for the right neoliberal party. And even then, it would have been like, I guess, lesser evil voting. But like, it wouldn't be as embarrassing. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't be as bad, literally. This guy's, everything he said is bad. I have yet to see, I mean, I read up a lot about him. I did not see a single thing where I was like, well, this is manageable. This makes him seem human.
Que esa situación es tan horrible.
During the campaign, he backed away from his proposal for an open market in human organs, but broke down in tears when accused of being a Nazi. He says he gets advice from his English mastiffs, named after neoliberal economists and cloned from his dearly departed dog Conan. Some say he's barking mad. But
he still talks to Conan, bro. He still gets advice from Conan. Dude, that's so sick. Yo, I'm sorry. This is like, we have not fully understood what the Cold War era forced neoliberalism did to Latin America. Because like, the impacts of that are still happening. You cannot fuck up an entire region like for years and years, for decades on end, and expect it not to have like every now and then have this kind of outcome. Did we break them too? I mean, we did, but so did England. England more so, and then we did as well. We broke everybody. America has its hands in everything. Bro, you're going, did we brick this guy? Look at him. What do you think? He is the most Reddit president you could have. This is a more Reddit president than fucking what's his name, Bukele. He is more Reddit than the guy in El Salvador. Like, think about that. I thought, there's no way someone could be more Reddit than a guy who literally said, I'm going to turn my country into an NFT, okay? Yeah, because American meddling in the Latin America ended with the Cold War, right? No, of course it didn't. But I'm just saying that, like, the most important impact was during the Cold War, I think.
Despite his decisive electoral win, Milei may not be able to push through his radical agenda because he has little support in Congress or the Senate, and no regional governors are from his fledgling political party.
He has been clever enough to understand the social context, has been clever enough to run a campaign without many resources. He has been elected president. Now, can he be able to do it, to move forward without experience?
I think everyone is going to say this is a consequence of Peronism and how like left-wing Peronism is the reason as to why Argentina said enough is enough. And it's like that completely betrays any kind of serious analysis over the situation. And that is like what most people are going to talk about, which is what I assume people will be complaining about.
Without the Congress, without the governors, and there is a lot of doubts about that.
All night, Milei's supporters gathered round Buenos Aires' iconic obelisk. But in the cold light of day, they may find that what lies ahead is not deliverance, but months of economic and political instability, as their new president struggles to turn idiosyncratic campaign slogans into a workable program for government.
Wait, Tucker Carlson interviewed him? No shot, dude. No.
For politics.
But why wouldn't he? Of course he did. Oh, God, I hate
Dr. Christopher Sabatini is the Senior Research Fellow for Latin America at the Foreign Affairs think tank Chatham House. He joins us now from West London. Can he do what he says he wants to do? Can he really take a chainsaw to the health service and government departments and scrap the peso and bring in the dollar when nobody has any dollars?
Christian, it's a good question. There are a number of obstacles. The first one is that he only has a handful of deputies in the Chamber of Deputies and about 7 senators in the 72-seat Senate. So his ability to implement such radical changes is going to confront his limited political ballast, if you will, within the system, and he has no governors. First, there's that. The second is his economic ideas are truly untested. As your report mentioned.
Are they, though? Are they, though? I feel like that's copium in some ways, because, like, his economic ideals are, I guess, like, the most neoliberal. Like, it's neoliberalism on steroids, but, like, I wouldn't say they're fucking, I wouldn't say that they're untested. We've been implementing it slowly but surely everywhere. I mean, Chile is a great example of a place that forcibly implemented them. So this is in many ways, I feel like this is the classic, like, real capitalism hasn't been tried copium. You were waiting for this motherfucker to win to cover him, right? Well, I wasn't waiting for him to win. I did not want him to win. I don't know enough about, I'm not, like, it's not my strong suit beyond, like, memes, Argentina politics. I have now been forced to look at all of the memes and also do some reading on his background. I covered him a little bit, but he said today he's going to privatize state media and state energy and petroleum, which is already done in the 90s. Hassan doesn't give a shit about Latin America law. That's not true. That's actually completely untrue. Hi, chat. Argentinian here is true. I'm truly saddened about the result of the elections. Not only Milei is a far-right libertarian, he's also a climate change denier. It vindicates the atrocities committed by the last dictatorship and wants to privatize our national oil company. It's really sad what is happening to our country. Love for you in chat. His competitor was a Hillary Clinton, basically. He was going to win law. Anyway, let's continue.
Earlier, there are no dollars in the central bank, or very few. So the idea of completely dollarizing the economy is really a non-starter, certainly right now.
Yeah, that part is untested, I guess.
But second, he's going to confront a political economic system in Argentina that has basically grown up around a state-centric, clientelistic economy. More than 80% of Argentines depend on some form of public good, whether it's subsidy.
It's like, for those of you here, I'll give you the Oxford reference for Peronism, okay? So this is the ill-defined Argentinian political ideology. the social base of the first regime coming in 1946 to 1955. An ill-defined Argentinian political ideology known as justicialismo, which espouses Juan Perón's policies of social justice, economic nationalism, and international non-alignment. I wouldn't say it's like social democracy. I feel like it is a little bit different than social democracy because there's right-wing components mixed into it. It remained strong within Argentina after Perón's departure in 1955, largely among the trade unions, which cherished the memory of the early years of his presidency. In May 1989, the Peronist Menem was elected president. As far as I understand it, good luck defining Peronism. It is not easy, in my opinion, to define it. It is a populist movement. It's one that, in a country with like insane levels of wealth inequality, due to land barons consolidating and amassing all of their wealth over a post-colonial century, almost like over multiple decades of intergenerational wealth accumulation. This is one of the first instances of like ostensibly leftist worker movement. So it, of course, was incredibly fucking popular, but it is a reactionary social democracy is a decent way of looking at it. It's like early pre-full tilt fascism, Mussolini almost, kind of. I'm doing a really bad job of describing it, I feel like. But because there's a lot of great social amenities that come along with it, it's very popular. Like when you offer social amenities to people, especially after never having their needs met, all of a sudden it doesn't fucking really matter what your ideological grounding is, what your principles are. It just, people will ride for it, and it has. It is stuck for many, many years. But yeah, in May 1989, the Peronist Menem was elected president, but his economic program, including the privatization of state-owned industries of foreign buyers, betrayed many Peronist principles. Indeed, Menem managed to redefine Peronism as a movement of compromise. It shed its traditional image of a party composed of rowdy trade unionists and led by shady mafia-type characters, and moved to attract the political center ground. Under Eduardo Duhalde, the Peronists lost the 1999 presidential elections, but he became the president amidst a deep economic and political crisis in December 2001. Duhalde was succeeded by Nestor Kirchner in 2003, under whom the Peronist Justice Party continued to defend its overwhelming majority parliament. Kirchner did not stand in 2007, supporting the successful candidacy of his wife, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. Let's get back to what's going on right now in Argentina.
Whether it's handouts, whether it's even employment in the government. So what we're looking at is a series of very radical, untested economic ideas confronting a system that is not really cut out for this sort of wrenching change.
But if he has the people out on the streets cheering him now, what happens when he can't do what they voted for?
Well, I think we'll see, first of all, we'll see a number of things. Many of the people that have voted for him are truly disenfranchised, they're disgusted, they're angry with the political class. So, and many of them are not necessarily direct beneficiaries of those public subsidies that we talked about. They work in the informal sector. They are largely youth. You mentioned in the ingoing segment here that he's largely built his campaign with very little money on TikTok, and that is tied into the youth. And if you're under 30...
Okay, but as far as I understand, that's not true either. Milei's popularity came from right-wing fucking media pumping his ass on television non-fucking stop for years and years, and creating this behemoth of a meme before TikTok pushed him. Also, it would destroy the fucking the argument that TikTok is backed by CCP, because his major point of contention is that we need to break away from China. I'm going to go to Israel. I'm moving the fucking Argentinian embassy to Jerusalem, which is like dick riding to an unimaginable degree. It's like, dog, if you have like 143% inflation, why the fuck do you care about riding Israel's cock? What are you doing? Okay, he is literally Reddit personified, hates China, wants to literally change the country's currency to the American dollar, wants to blow up the central bank. RG here, for the last 2 years, right-wing media has been having him on weekly in the news. Literally one of their responsibilities. This guy made it this far. No, it's literally a Trumpian situation. Yeah, dollarization is not untested. Argentina had a 1-1 forced dollar parity during neoliberal governments. That's also true. And then that's also, as far as I understand, played into the current economic collapse that they're withstanding. I feel like in order to talk about Argentina, you have to talk about the IMF, which is, you know, something that I've talked about so many fucking times, except it's another one of those like classic Hasanabi America bad moments, but it is a country that is absolutely eviscerated by the same economic shock doctrine that has ruined so many.
You're looking at very dismal job prospects. So for many of his followers, and he's clearly created a very cult-like following, they are not beneficiaries of that. But what will happen is, in any attempt to reform even close to what he's proposing, what he's going to have to confront are very powerful economic vested interests. And that is going to be difficult. I think it will be very difficult economically as well as politically, especially given a Peronist party that lost, graciously, luckily, but clearly maintains the factores de poder, these particular sort of popular elements of mobilization and organization.
Do you think democracy can survive in Argentina, or could we see a return to the past?
There are several challenges to democracy. It's not going to be a coup d'etat like we saw, say, in 1976. The time has passed when we see generals goose-stepping their way towards the presidential palace and removing an elected president. Having said that, what we could see is an erosion of the fundamental checks and balances of democracy. The only way he can fundamentally organize and implement his plan is really by steamrolling the Congress, given his low levels of representatives. But also the levels of polarization, the discourse, and again, your very good introductory segment talked about how vulgar and coarse his public debate is. That is going to have a very dire effect on civic culture within Argentina, as well as his own sort of capacity and tolerance for pluralism that he's clearly, as the chainsaw symbol represents, doesn't have a lot of capacity for, let's say.
Might he have
Dude, I'm from Argentina. The campaign of this guy was operated from think tanks in the USA, like Liberty Foundation and Heritage Foundation. Yeah, it's not a fucking accident that Ben Shapiro's been dick riding him so fucking hard. Everyone will think, oh, Ben Shapiro loves him because, like, Milei loves Israel or whatever, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is because, like, Elon Musk and Ben Shapiro both dick ride this man because he is, like, he basically is, like, we no longer need the CIA to go in and specifically prop up people like this in countries like Argentina. You can just have a guy do it on his own, okay? The same forces are still at play, but that's why I was talking about how the Cold War and its devastating impact on Latin American countries is still very much alive. It's kind of like, you know how I talked about J. Edgar Hoover could have never imagined a world in which, like, you know, black Zoomers on TikTok would be shitting on Martin Luther King by using literally the FBI smears against them, saying that he, like, MLK actually hated black women or whatever the fuck, like, because the internet does it on its own now. Or how the DSA or any kind of, like, socialist movement basically inevitably engages in its own, like, COINTELPRO on its own. You know what I mean? Like, there's always sectarian infighting that's happening nonstop in leftist movements without, like, any kind of intervention from the federal agencies. It's basically kind of like that. We have broken every country. We've broken ourselves as well. So now you don't even need, like, serious direct intervention, and you could just have a guy like that neoliberalism will cause so much chaos in your country, okay? Neoliberalism will cause so much chaos in your country that you don't even need like a American-backed military coup and a military dictatorship to like forcibly come into power and rewrite the Constitution with a bunch of like American dickhead, college campus neoliberals. You don't have to do any of that. You got motherfuckers doing it for you on their own volition.
Any international allies? I mean, he's a fan of Donald Trump. Is there anybody out there who might come and bail him out?
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, Donald Trump is a supporter. Donald Trump really doesn't have a lot of affinity for those who have ties to democratic norms and those niceties. He tweeted his congratulations to Milei. Tucker Carlson, the Fox News host, who is a big Donald Trump supporter, was actually in Argentina. He also counts to the support of Javier Bolsonaro, the now disgraced but former president of Brazil, who also they held a FaceTime conversation shortly after Milei was elected. He will have allies. The question is sort of what can those allies bring?
Okay, both of his allies are disgraced former presidents. What does that say? Not a good. Doesn't instill a lot of confidence. But the reality is this, okay? As the far right Israeli government has shown, as the Bolsonaro government, but also as the State Department's immediate message after Milei winning the election. The American government doesn't give a shit. It don't matter to us if you're far right. We love that shit, dog. The fuck do you mean? Yeah, look, there you go. We look forward to working with him and his administration. White House's John Kirby said of Milei, Argentina is a terrific partner in the region, and there's an awful lot of things we share in terms of values, value of democracy, human rights, and just hemispheric security. That's what our take is. We don't give a fuck. Oh, we lost an Argentinian chatter wrote a fucking essay. Scooby Dios. Argentinian chatter here. I was just from your stream starting to appreciate the stuff we have here. Things like free healthcare, really good, and completely free universities, good public transport. Even with all our flaws, it felt like we were going in the right direction and we had a lot of potential, but turns out now it's Jover for us. I'm so fucking sad that this is such a setback. Not to mention all the dictatorship denial, like a German president denying the Holocaust. Yeah. There's also the component, there's also another problem here is fucking vice president, from what I understand, right? Like his VP is even fucking worse. This guy is crazy, man. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you other than holy shit. He is literally like, if you put one of my haters into a fucking lab and broke their brains further with like r/neoliberal and all the ANCAP memes, you literally spit out this guy.
He's denounced the president of Brazil, Lula, as being a savage communist, which I guess is worse than just being a normal communist. He's also said that he wants to cut ties with China, which will be impossible given that China represents a large share of the markets for Argentine agricultural goods. He will find allies, and he's promised also to move the Argentine embassy to Jerusalem, much as his.
He said that's his first trip. That's his first act. That's like Juan Guaido going. Remember when Juan Guaido was in fucking America and he was like, well, constitutionally speaking, I know that like I have this like window of power, right? In the Venezuelan constitution that would give me the opportunity to like change Venezuelan politics. And what will I do in that moment? I'll just go to America and tell the American Congress that like I love Israel, and also I'm going to privatize our oil extraction industries. It's like, wow, thanks, man. That's super sick. I'm glad. That's really what people of Venezuela were like gonna vote for you on. That is what they want. That's what they wanted. Thank you. Argentina here, Villarreal, his VP complained about posters remembering the desaparecidos of the last dictatorship in the school she voted at.
His sort of patron and Donald Trump has done, but it's going to be difficult, especially in a neighborhood, South America, that's very much tilted to the left.
Dr. Sabatini, thank you very much indeed. Thanks.
Other Argentinian chatter here. The Argentine left forcibly pushed the public to the right because it's ridden with corruption. I value Argentina's dedication to public infrastructure, but Kirchnerismo has constantly fucked everyone in the ass and could not be allowed to win again. The desaparecidos are the missing people, right? People that were disappeared, killed with no body to mourn by the last dictatorship. Yeah. Argentinian history is fucked, dude.
This is the Buenos Aires you don't see in postcards. Slums like the Villa 2124 have long been bastions of support of the ruling Peronist party. But with more than 40% of Argentines living in poverty, there is a new kid on the block who doesn't look or speak like any other politician. And he's leading.
Funny because Argentina was affected by Operation Condor, but this guy's just doing it for them, lol. Like, just ready for the selling of the entire industries. And of course, all these guys are funded, educated by the Atlas Network, Koch, Thiel, American think tanks. 100%. That's what I'm saying. That's what's the craziest part about this is that, like, look, I'm Turkish. I know very well what it looks like when you get a fucking neoliberal in power. Okay? A neoliberal populist in power. Except the difference is, at the top of the hour, there's still a 3-minute ad break. No, I'm Turkish. I know what it's like when you got a populist leader. Okay? You get a populist leader, except the difference here is that even in Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, when he was running, was like, fuck the IMF. How dare they? How dare they try to fucking control what we do to our own economy? Now, of course, when he did come into power, he privatized a bunch of key sectors. Of course he did that. He was the guy. He was the guy for the IMF. But he didn't run on it. This guy did. This guy literally did. He basically, without openly mentioning it, he basically was advocating for the policies that would be implemented, like the same exact policies that we implemented, that have been implemented as a matter of fact. Did you read up about the dictatorship? Put aside all the memes. People were tortured, killed, and disappeared by the state. It was mass genocide, I know, and have family members who were kidnapped. It's fucked up. Fuck people who say we didn't have a choice. Milei said he didn't care about the IMF because he was going to have an even harder implementation than the one that the IMF was asking.
In the race to become Argentina's next president.
Yo filosóficamente soy anarcocapitalista. El Estado es el enemigo, es una organización criminal. ¿Sí?
Milei's message is reaching voters fed up with the usual politics.
La gente está cagada de hambre acá. No es porque vivamos en la villa no tengamos hambre, no, sí hay hambre.
Walter fixes bicycles for a living, but still relies on government-funded free meals, water and electricity to survive. The sort of state intervention that Milei opposes and would like to cut. But Walter will vote for him anyway. He wants change.
Yo por mí estoy cobrando 60.000 pesos. No puedo comprarme calzado, ropa, porque la ropa está muy cara hoy en el día. La Argentina va para abajo.
For Walter, things can't get much worse.
Yo lo veo a Milei, digamos, una persona, digamos, ya que quiere cambiar la Argentina.
Javier Milei wants to upend the country's politics and promises to make Argentina great again.
Argentina, en 15 años, podría estar alcanzando niveles de vida similares a los que tiene Italia o Francia.
It's so funny when they talk about like Italy or France and like all of these places. Literally, if there's one universal value or one universal fact, every single nation that you look to as like beacons of prosperity, and I will include China on this as well now, right? As far as like economic development, have remained that way due to either not being colonized, okay, or because, more importantly than that, because China was, right, having robust social safety nets. It's so fucking weird, man. It's such an odd thing. Like the literal implementation of social democratic principles from like 100 fucking years ago have been carrying these goddamn countries right now as, you know, right-wing elements desperately try to dismantle what remains of the carcass of social democracy. Okay? Every one of these countries. So what blows my mind is like dudes going, yeah, what I'm going to do with Argentina is take a fucking chainsaw to all of our social spending, and that's how we're going to contain inflation. Is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And then we're going to get to, you know, European social democracy levels of prosperity when, as far as I understand it, even in its most wealthiest time frame, Argentina has never actually had, while you know their GDP might have been great overall, they've never actually had even development. Even development is the name of the game here.
Y si me dan 35, Estados Unidos.
His supporters love his chainsaw gimmick. He wants to send a message that he will rip through the status quo.
Yeah, I actually did a study a few years ago. It's unironically rooted in the colonial Spanish caste system. The common argument is that Europeans can do that, but we cannot since they are rich and smart. Yeah, and if you're talking about the European caste structure, Argentina is quite literally, as far as I understand it, the most like European dick riding country of all time in Latin America. There is a it seems permanent. There is a permanent aristocracy that is that has like a landlord aristocracy that has calcified in this country, and time again, all of the implementation, all of the policies have basically reconfirmed it in as it was developing and refusing to industrialize when other nations were unironically moving in that direction.
I went to one of his rallies and saw how this political upstart with Elvis hair is managing to win over middle-class voters.
Why do they refuse to industrialize? I mean, money. If you feel like your agricultural output is like enough for those in positions of power to make enough money, then why would you? Most of this tracks back to adjustment rates and IMF loans bankrupting every single country south of our border. This all comes from the IMF ensuring outside interests in the country, fucking them even more. Venezuela was the only one to starve it off, and look what happened there, CIA. Yeah.
It's a recurring theme among his supporters that for decades Argentines have been betrayed by their politicians and only Milei can save the country. Back in the Villa 2124, Walter is getting ready to receive the only meal he will eat today.
Yes, this is a really reductive and yet fairly sound way to describe it. People like to say Argentina was richer than the U.S., but it was a plantation/mine operation ruled by the old colonial rulers, Spaniards born in Latin America, where 10 people had all the money. Yes. And the needs of the working class and the peasants were like never met, which gives you, I think, an analytical framework to understand why something like Peronism took hold and became it became basically like a permanent cultural political force. Whoever even remotely does marginal improvements on the labor force and says that they're backing the labor force and the working class is going to become a legend. Mispronouncing Peron is going to end me today. Okay, listen, Latin America is not my strong suit. Okay,
throughout the place. Inside, it's grueling work for Pedro Carvajal, one of the cooks.
A la mañana 400 y pico y a la noche también. Así tenemos más o menos casi 300 en lista de espera.
¿Qué pasaría en esta villa si es que no existiera este servicio que ustedes están brindando?
Y hay mucha pobreza acá, no sé, no hay mucha gente que no tiene para comer y bueno, el que trabaja también, a veces el que trabaja también viene a retirar porque no le alcanza la plata.
Pedro told me he will also vote for Milei. He's hungry for change. But unlike Walter, he would only tell me off camera. He doesn't want everyone to know. This might be the Buenos Aires you're familiar with, one that looks like a modern, prosperous city.
Dude, so much. Dude, also, Argentina can't have that discussion without white supremacy, okay? Obviously, white supremacy or anti-black or anti-indigenous politics runs Latin American countries, but this is like the most obvious version of it. A lot of you probably look to the fact that what percentage of Argentina is Italian and think, well, clearly they're not white, they're Italian. But, you know, all jokes aside, it's like Western chauvinism in full display in that regard, like showcasing Buenos Aires and nothing else, or not even like the poorer slums of Buenos Aires.
But on the streets, you see hunger.
Like he means when the reporter is saying that, he's basically talking about how European looking the cities are.
And poverty on every corner. And plenty of people dread that Milei in power would only make things worse. In the Villa 2124, Father Lorenzo de Vedia is one of those voices, warning his congregation against voting for Milei out of anger or desperation.
La gente se confunde y dice, acá está El Salvador. No, El Salvador.
Most Argentinians are not German. Stop that. I never said that. I did not say that at all. But there is a lot of Italians. Decent amount of Germans too, but a lot of Italians.
Jesús.
¿Qué pasaría si no existiesen estos comedores? ¿Qué pasaría con la gente?
La ayuda social que se da son el gran colchón sobre el cual se puede recostar la gente, y sin eso la crisis que estamos viviendo hubiera explotado.
Walter, back home with his dinner, doesn't care.
Sí, bueno, acá tengo luz, agua, sí. Aparte que tiene su locura, pero bueno, confío mucho en esa persona, digamos, o sea, que Milei no pueden sacar, digamos, ya del...
I don't understand why a bunch of poor people will be like, fuck whatever safety nets we have. Brother, are you kidding me? You will never... First of all, America doesn't have fucking... And has, you know... In contemporary American history, we've never had inflation anywhere near what these guys are experiencing, okay? That's why I always joke whenever I talk about Turkey, because Argentina and Turkey, like, there's some parallels there. But even then, look to West Virginia. Plus 35 Trump state, dog. What do you mean? What do you mean? I understand why hog jet ski dealers want to vote for Trump and propaganda. Argentina doesn't even seem divided on it. No, there's plenty of poor people who love voting for Trump too. Poor people love voting for reactionary politicians who, you know, tell them like, who feed them the gospel of change and prosperity. People don't recognize their class interests at all. And why should they, when a capitalist structure creates information, creates an information vacuum that forces you to never engage with politics from a materialist perspective, to never recognize your class interests. When you're a colonized nation, it's incredibly hard to industrialize as your resources are constantly being exported out. To do so, colonized nations have to kick out the U.S. and European corporations with even less concern with the country's development and stability when Argentinian businessmen to successfully industrialize and deal with internal conflicts.
De lo que estamos, del pozo.
Milei might be a leap into the unknown, but Walter, like millions of Argentines, feels like he's already backed into a corner. And now he's ready to take the plunge.
Just look at El Salvador, for example. The president is just jailing everyone with a tattoo saying crime went down and that's enough for people. Oh my God, I don't even want to talk about El Salvador, dude. That shit is nutty. Here is Progressive International saying, President-elect Javier Milei confirms that he will close Argentina's central bank, privatize state-owned energy company YPF, sell off all public broadcast networks, and travel to the U.S. and Israel before inauguration on the 10th of December. Poor people love ANCAPs because they've only seen the world through small-scale monetary exchanges plus taxes, and that's the idea that ANCAPs sell. It's hard to imagine the scale at which government actually functions when all you've ever done is fix bikes or whatever. You are addressing Argentina's economic issues and woes, but you are not mentioning that starting today, steam won't take Argentine pesos any longer. That is the greatest tragedy. Well, there you go. Watch what happens with dollarization. Fan for a long time, but no, usually right. But as Argentinian, I think the discussion is silly because I don't care about how crazy this dude is. In fact, I like a little crazy, but the politics are brutal, like brutal privatization and going back to rates that we give, like wean, like abortion and same-sex marriage. What the fuck? Argentine gamers going to try to pay U.S. prices with Argentinian wages? I mean, that's why there is a secondary black market for everything in countries like this, in Turkey especially as well. There's no way that you can fucking buy video games with American prices, okay, with the American dollar when you're making Argentinian wages. Don't talk about our country, bro. Shut the fuck up, bitch.